This is our leading story, so let's get back to it. The first group of Afrikaner so-called refugees bound for the United States are expected to touch down in Washington within hours. They departed from the O.R. Tambo International Airport late last night in a controversial relocation move that has stirred political as well as public debate. U.S. President Donald Trump claims the white Afrikaner population is being persecuted in South Africa and faces government-backed discrimination. Let's talk then to Crispin Phiri, then, who joins us now as well. He is the Dirco spokesperson for more on this one. Crispin, thank you so much for the time. First and foremost, can we just start by confirming just the number of people who have actually left? Is that 49, 54? Just if you could give us an exact number, please.
We understand that it's 49 people who have taken up the offer for refugee status in the United States. And just to be clear, Arabile, the South African government unequivocally states that these are not refugees. In a country like ours, you would know, Arabile, some of us went to schools where we were taught Afrikaans. So the idea that people are being persecuted and still being taught Afrikaans, by the way, Afrikaans is still a medium of instruction and language in many of our schools. We have judges, ministers, former mayors. We have street names after Afrikaner heroes and Afrikaner nationals in the liberation context as well. And also still to this day, you can drive on a four-tracker street in any town in South Africa. Yeah. So this idea that Afrikaners are being persecuted is completely false, let alone the fact that Afrikaners are not just white people, right? They're also Africans who are Afrikaners. So this is something that we've stated quite unequivocally, that we contest the status of them being refugees. Yeah. But we've also said we're not going to stand in their way. Our constitution grants one the right to leave the country in terms of Section 23, subsection 2 of the Constitution, and that be so. If people want to leave the country, they're most welcome to do so.
So ultimately, they leave South Africa as ordinary citizens, even though they arrive in the United States as refugees, then is ultimately what you're giving me there. Crispin?
That is our position in South Africa, definitely. They leave here as ordinary citizens.
Okay. Considering their constant right then, and in terms of their passport, in terms of what they hold as South Africans, will they continue to keep their status as South African citizens? Can they then be returned? And then I just want to talk to you about refoulement in just a moment. But ultimately, they maintain their status still as South African citizens, despite...
In terms of Section 20 of our Constitution, no one can be deprived of their citizenship. Yeah. So the question of deprivation may not necessarily arise. But here's the difficulty, and possibly for these individuals, is that if they accept refugee status in the United States and they are facilitated as refugees, the United States cannot return them to South Africa for whatever reason. So they cannot be deported by the government of the United States. And that's what the principle of non-refoulement speaks to. And that is because, Arabile, if I come to you and I say I'm being persecuted in country X, and you accept that I'm being persecuted, it would be wrong in international law for you to return me to that country, because I've said to you, there's a real possible harm that I would be harmed as an individual, so you would put me in danger, so to speak. So the United States, in terms of international law, as we understand it, may not be able to deport these citizens. They may self-deport themselves by coming back to South Africa, but that would also mean that they then renounce their refugee status in the United States. So it's really a complex situation for these individuals concerned.
Will you continue to keep track of these citizens then, perhaps in any way, just ultimately if they're still allowed to go to the embassy of South Africa in the United States, etc., would they still be allowed to do all of that as a normal South African ordinary citizen would?
That's the complication as well. A refugee, once they're in a country and engage with the diplomatic services of their country of origin, also run the risk of revoking their refugee status in that said country. So that's how it works generally in international law. So these individuals would also then have very, very complex difficulties having to access diplomatic services as South African citizens in that country, having taken up this refugee status.
Do we know their status then? I mean, in terms of, if land expropriation seems to be the main aim and the main issue at play here, are they landowners themselves? Are they farmers particularly?
The difficulty for us as South Africans in this process is that the refugee processes are done on a confidential basis.
Okay.
So one, we don't know what reasons they claim they are being facilitated to the United States on as individuals themselves. And because generally it's a confidential process, the United States would not necessarily reveal that to us. But we do understand that they are being facilitated by, we've sought clarity, and the United States government has said to us they are being facilitated there as refugees. To the extent that these are people who own farms and so on, it seems to us that that's highly unlikely. But it's a matter that we could look up to some extent. But that's not necessarily something that falls within our purview as Dirco, what their status is in South Africa. But having seen them on various broadcasting channels, they seem like very ordinary South Africans.
Okay, very quickly, I've run out of time. I've only got 30 seconds. What does this mean for relations with the United States as we continue to try and sort this issue out?
There are ongoing engagements at strategic levels. As you would have seen, the Deputy Minister had an engagement with his counterpart. And we are looking forward to more engagements at that strategic level where these issues that we disagree about will be thoroughly thrashed out, but also where issues of mutual interests are, we'll then agree on how to cooperate. And that is the basis of diplomacy. There are points where we would require cooperation, and there are points where we would have to clarify certain elements of our bilateral relationship.
Crispin Phiri, Dirco spokesperson, appreciate your time this morning.